Hey now, Brawlers, today we're going to take a look at Kanzume Goddess, or Kanzume Goddess. Oh, there's the front, or there's the front, either way. Which means either Goddess in a can or Canned Goddess. I don't know if it's interchangeable or if it means one or the other, but it's a game that comes in a can, and we're going to get back to that later. Trust me, I have some strong thoughts about that can. But what the game itself is a deck building game. There's a lot of Japanese deck building games that came out in the wake of the popularity of Dominion. It seems to be one of the most popular types of games that Japan has been producing, although Japan seems to have a preoccupation with card games themselves, so that's not really a surprise. They don't do a lot of big, grandiose board games like, say, Fantasy Flight Games does over here. But Japanime Games, an American company, went ahead and picked this up. And this is one of the very first big Kickstarters that they did before they did Kickstarters for Crossmaster Arena, which is their big claim to fame at this point in time. And there was some controversy surrounding Kanzume Goddess because apparently there was not a lot of communication. Some backers didn't get what they were supposed to get, or it took too long. And so long, in fact, that a lot of people, myself included, picked it up at retail long before some of the Kickstarter backers actually got a hold of the game, which is not acceptable. I feel very badly about it. If it was me, and this almost happened to me with Zombicide Season 2, because I think it came very close to the point of them selling Zombicide Season 2, Prison Outbreak, at Gen Con last year before I even got it in my hands, and I think I just barely got it before the start of the show. Which doesn't seem like a big deal, but symbolically, Kickstarter backers are supposed to get it first, so I'm not going to dwell on this, but I won't apologize for that. That was probably a very poorly run Kickstarter campaign. But let's talk about the game itself. And this is like I said, it's a deck building game, and the players are going to take control of either Norse gods or Greek gods. And when I say that, they're very stylistic depictions of these gods in a very anime manga style, usually scantily clad, mostly women, and although there's a few guys thrown in for good measure. So right off the bat, that's going to eliminate a lot of people who would potentially play this game. But there are some interesting things here that if you like deck building games, you might want to go ahead and check out. So let's go ahead and go through an overview of the game, then we're going to come back. I'll tell you what my final thoughts are. Okay, I'm going to give you a brief overview of Kanzume Goddess. This is a competitive game for 2 to 6 players, where each player takes control of a different either Norse god or Greek god, and you're trying to wipe out all of your other opponents, unless you play it as a team game. Because you can either play this as a 2 to 6 player individual match, where it's just every man, or I should say god or goddess for themselves, or you can play it as a team match with either 4 or 6 players, in which case you split up into even teams. One player is designated as the main god with their god card, and the other players on each team are designated as support gods. If you're the main god, you get 20 life points. If you're the support gods, you get 10 life points. And the only goal is to kill the other team's main god. I'll get back to the god cards in a minute, just once I go through the basic rules of the game. Now, this is a deck building game. Most of the mechanics are similar to other deck builders that you've played. I would say that this falls more in line with Ascension type deck builders in that there are no preset allotment of cards for the most part. Instead, everything is mostly random. The difference here is that you have all of these warrior stacks of cards out here. Those are what these 6 piles are. These are actually all randomized stacks of warrior cards, but at the beginning of the game, you're going to deal them out evenly into 6 stacks. Every time one of the top cards is purchased or banished for whatever reason, you have access to the card that's directly underneath it, but you never know what it is. It's random. But you always have access to priestesses, bishops, and sacred guardians. And in fact, at the beginning of the game, each player is going to start with 8 priestesses and 2 sacred guardians. Now, priestesses are going to give you the main currency for the game, which is faith points. That's this little yellow symbol here. Up in the top corner of every card is the actual cost for these cards that you have to, the faith points that you have to spend in order to acquire these cards. And these 3 cards here are called Disciples, all the rest are called Warriors, which is an important distinction as you're playing through the rest of the game. You can always upgrade and get better cards, which are Bishops, which give you 2 faith points instead of 1, like the Priestesses you start off with do. And you start off with 2 Sacred Guardians that can buy more. Now, Sacred Guardians let you, there's two different types of abilities that cards have in this game. They have React and Act. If it's an Act ability, you can play it on your, both of these are React, but there's React and Act, and if it's an Act ability, on your turn you can play the card and do whatever the Act ability is. But if it's a react ability, even if it's not your turn, you can immediately get rid of it from your hand either by discarding it, or in the case of the for instance, the Sacred Guardian says as a defense, you can discard it to prevent 2 damage to yourself. But if it's for the other ability, you put this card into the Netherworld, which is essentially banished from the game, to avoid a god's ability. So you have 2 options with this, and there's a lot of different cards that have different act and react. But when you play it for one, either act or react, you have to choose. You don't get the other ability as well. So you'll start off with your deck of cards, and in typical deck building fashion, on your turn, you can play as many cards as as many Disciple cards as you want in an effort to get more faith points in order to buy one of the cards off the top of the stacks. And if you have enough faith points, you have unlimited buys as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the other cards that you can purchase. You have Pisces here, her act ability is select a player and look at their hands, choose up to 2 Disciple cards in their hand. That player discards those cards. You have Sagittarius. Are you noticing a theme here? Act ability, draw a card. Select a visible card in the public area and put it into the Netherworld. So that's something that can get rid of cards off the top of stacks. You have Pandora here, who has an act ability. Choose a warrior card in your hand or in your discard pile and put it into the Netherworld. Then choose a warrior card in any player's discard pile and put it into the Netherworld. Valiant Star, she has an attack ability, attacking value of 4. That means if they can't defend, your opponent that you're attacking has to lose that many life points. Capricorn, acts, draw a card. Reacts, defense, protects, defending value of 2. And let's look at Gemini. Gemini has an act ability, draw a card and gain an energy. Energy is life points. I've been using the terms interchangeably. And remember that the cost of the card is always in the top corner. Now you might be wondering what these little circles are up in the top corner of the card. Let's look at a more distinct allotment of colors here on Pisces. The bigger circle with the color in it is this card's main color. The 2 little circles are their supporting colors. This is the color restraint system of the game. Now normally on your turn you are only allowed to play 1 warrior card, so any card from these 6 stacks. But if you have a card in your hand that is one of the supporting colors of the first card that you played, you can go ahead and play that card. So, for instance, Pisces supporting colors are red and gray. So, if I had Valiant Star and Pisces in my hand at the same time, I could play Pisces, resolve her abilities, then because red is one of her supporting colors, I could play Valiant Star. Now, I can continue the chain if I want by playing either a gray or a gold. So, if I had Gemini in my hand, boom, I get to play Gemini as well. But if you don't meet the color requirements, you may stall in place. And that can happen where you just are not able to play all the different cards that you want to simply because you cannot follow the color chain. And this is how the game works. You're going to keep playing, trying to acquire better cards, hoping that the colors match up so that you can actually play them and use their abilities, because if they don't, then they don't do anything, and trying to use attack cards to knock out your opponent's energy, hit points. Now let's look at some of the gods that you start off with. Like I said, there are Greek and Norse gods. There's 6 of each, and they all have different special abilities. I'm just going to pick a few. Yeah, let's look at the main ones. All right, so of course every Norse god game has to have Odin. And Odin's ability is Judgment. You can, whenever a player performs Adjudication, you may discard a card from your hand. If you do, the Adjudication fails automatically. You know, I always forget what Adjudication is. It's it doesn't come up too often, so I'll get back to that in a second. Ruler, during your play phase, if you attack with a warrior card, you may activate this ability. If you do, you may have that warrior attack 1 additional god after completing the first attack. Now let's look at Valkyrie. Whenever your Disciple card will be put into the Netherworld, you may activate the ability. If you do, put that card into your discard pile instead. Whenever a warrior card is put into the Netherworld, you may pay an energy. If you do, perform Adjudication. If the Adjudication card is the Disciple card, put the warrior card in your discard pile. You know, I think Adjudication is just drawing a card. Yeah, I forget. Hold on. Then we'll take a look at these. There's Thor, and there's Loki. So you have all the major Norse gods represented. Then you have the Greek gods as well. And you have Athena, who, whenever a warrior attacks a god, you may activate this ability. If you do, for the rest of the turn, you may play any yellow warrior cards in your hand as though they have the React Defense 2 ability. Then we have Zeus. I'll just blow through these. I want to remember what Adjudication does. Zeus, Poseidon, Apollo, all your greatest hits, Artemis, and Hades, who looks very distinct and different than the other cards. Yeah, I think that Adjudication just lets you draw cards, Reveal the top card of your deck, put the revealed card in your discard pile after resolving the adjudication. So I don't know, it's just another weird way to like scry your deck essentially. But in any case, that's Kanzume Goddess. Take your god. You actually use your god as your little hit point marker along this track here. And take your god, try to get the best cards, and knock out your opponents. That's the whole game. All right, let's just go ahead and talk about the can. So, it certainly draws attention to itself. If I had purchased it off the shelf of a store, I would just walk by and be like, oh, well, what is this? Is this a game? And on my shelf, it looks kind of neat, but it's completely inconvenient. I'm sorry. The novelty of it does not overcome the fact that it's just completely inconvenient. It sits here. It sits in front of other games that I have so that you can't see what those games are, especially when I have it on the smaller game shelf, and it just sits out like a sore thumb. It doesn't stack with anything. So I'm aggravated with the can. What's the Japanese word for boxed? Like boxed goddess. That's what the next iteration of this should be. Although boxed goddess sounds kind of dirty, so let's move on. But let's go ahead and talk about the game. Well, actually, going back to the components, sort of, for one moment. As far as the artwork and design of the cards. Now, I'm an unapologetic anime and manga fan, and I enjoy when board games and card games that I play have artistically those kind of themes, because it's just an art style that appeals to me, and I think that the art on these cards is particularly good. But a lot of them are, or most of them are, scantily clad anime women, some of them looking kind of young. So there are some people that are just heading for the door already. They're not interested in playing it based on that fact. I kind of get that. So I'm not going to think less highly of you because you don't want to play this game because of the artwork on the cards, although I don't think it's that big a deal. But to me, I like it because I'm just predisposed to like that kind of art style. As far as like the graphic design of like the text and the borders and things like that, it all looks pretty good, except that it has really small, tiny text, which is the same problem that Tanto Cuore, also from Japanime Games in America, the same problem that game had, which leads me to the theory that it has something to do with Japanese text looking better in the allotted space and looking bigger than the actual English text is. I don't know. That's just a theory, but I don't think it. I just think that the two different type of text styles and sizes don't mix. They don't go well. So the American style, the English, doesn't go well with the allotted space, as opposed to like it would probably be better in Japan, or it looks stupid in Japan too. I don't know, but in America, both those games, Tanto Cuore and Kanzume Goddess, have really, really small text. But that's really the only knock I have against the graphic design. The gameplay. It is a deck building game, and so there's a lot of the familiar tropes. There's some unique elements as far as the allotment of cards, because you make the different stacks of cards, so you have multiple different buying options, but each one is random, which sounds kind of weird, but if you saw my overview, you see what I mean. So it's basically the same thing as having, people love it when I say basically, it's basically the same thing as having the random starting lineup of a game like Ascension or DC Comics deck building game, but it feels a little bit different. As far as the whole team aspect, they primarily want you to play this game in teams. I mean, if you open up the really crappy fold-out rule book, which, okay, back to components, that sucks too. But you fold that out, and the main way that they tell you to play the game is via team mode. If you just want to play head-to-head one-on-one, it almost looks like it's an afterthought in the rules. But to me, that's the best way to play this game. I'm not really interested in the team mode. I played the team mode a couple of times with the 5 games that I've played of this, and it's okay, but it's not that great. And some of the combinations of characters can get weird. Me and my teammate in one of the games had a combination where it was like, I think it was Apollo and maybe Apollo's partner, the girl or something, who worked like too well together. It was overpowered. Essentially, they could not kill the main god on our team, who I think was Apollo. I can't remember how that combo worked, but it was just totally broken and not fun at all for the other players because they had no chance whatsoever. And even for my support character, because I was the main god, I think I was Apollo, it just wasn't a lot of fun because they'd just sit back and do nothing. So that can be kind of weird. But head-to-head, it gives me kind of a Star Realms feeling, because it's just very fast, and you're constantly in the other player's face, being very aggressive. You're encouraged to attack in this game, so that's pretty cool, and I think it's much better as a 2-player head-to-head game. What's probably most intriguing about this game, though, is the chaining of the colors, that kind of system. Now, I have Nightfall on my shelf, and I've had it for like a year, and I still haven't played it yet. I hear that Nightfall has the same kind of chaining system, so certainly, or something similar. Certainly, Kanzume Goddess is not the first, and probably won't be the last to use this kind of system, and it's probably not even implemented the best with Kanzume Goddess, but it's still very interesting to me. I would say it's the best part about this game, and the most frustrating, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Because I think that I've played so many deck builders at this point, and I've played certain deck builders so many times that I feel like there's an optimal way to play. There's always a killer card, assuming it's out there. I mean, in Dominion, you have the pre-prescribed sets of cards out there. In games like Ascension, it's always random, and you have to kind of think more on your toes, but it's easy for you to look at the lineup and say, that card is awesome, that's the card I need to get. It's just a matter of whether you have the currency to get it or not. Sometimes you just have in a randomized lineup game like that, or Ascension or Legendary, you just have a bump set of cards to choose from, but there's usually a power card that's going to work well, either on its own, it's just so awesome of a card, or in conjunction with other cards that you've purchased. And that's what you look for, and that's how you optimize your deck. But Kanzume Goddess is a little bit different because it's not enough for you to just buy that awesome card, because then you may not be able to play it, or at least not be able to play it optimally if you don't have the right color combinations in your deck. And I had that happen to me in at least a couple of games where I played, where I got these awesome cards and I was never able to play them, or I was able to play them but only as the first part of my chain, which meant I wasn't able to get all the power I could out of them. And it meant that I couldn't chain it off of the other cards because I didn't have the right colors to combine with it. But that's kind of the cool part too, because it encourages you to think out of the box and focus on getting those different color combination chains, so you can kind of do your best to guarantee that you have a hand where you can go boom, 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 play every card that you have and get a bunch of awesome abilities out of it, one chaining off another and working out these combos. But it's not something that's going to come easily. It's going to be something you have to work towards, and I just find that interesting. Having played so many different deck builders now, this was a refreshing change of pace, and I like that about it. I don't think it's a total game changer in the sense that there's, if you don't like the theme of this game and you've already got enough deck builders in your collection, or maybe even if you played Nightfall and it really does have a system similar to this, I don't think it's going to change your mind too much. But for me, it's fun enough and interesting enough that it's staying in my collection, and I enjoy having it. I would say it's a very good game. It's not a fantastic game. I think you could live without it if you're perfectly okay with playing Ascension and DC Deck Builder or whatever over and over again. But I really love deck builders. I like having a variety of deck builders, and I like the art style of this one, even though others might not. And I didn't have the bad Kickstarter experience, so so I don't have anything against them on that regard, so I don't have a bad taste in my mouth from it. So Kanzume Goddess, I think if you can get it cheap and you like deck builders and you're looking for a refreshing change of pace with deck builders, do check it out. It's just not going to set the world on fire, but not a bad game. Pretty darn good in my opinion. My name is Nick. This has been Board Game Brawl, and I remind you to get out there and game every day and every way. Take care.